Good morning, everybody. This is the first episode of Fantasy Sports with AR. This is a new show that I've created, and I'm very excited to share this with you. I am Anthony Remedios, your host, and I am here with Chris Linney. We are both, um, we both attended SBCLA for the first time this summer and have joined NSR. In the past, you may have seen me on Power Hour with Wilson Kahn and the SBC episode of Extra Innings. So basically, what this show is about is we're going to talk about different things for fantasy, fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball. We'll talk about playoff predictions for each sport, baseball, hockey, basketball, football, when the time comes. Um, We'll have different guests for each show as well. Today we have Chris. Other episodes we'll have Big Circus maybe, Will, and a lot of other fun guests as well. So this is the first run of this. So thanks in advance for your support, and let's get into it. Today we're going to talk about our baseball predictions. Even though some of the games have already started, Chris and I each created a bracket before they started, so we're going to talk about that, and then we'll move on to some fantasy football as we are in week 5, and then we will finish it up with, time permitting, a fantasy basketball preview. So, Chris, anything you would like to add before we get started? All right. So let's talk about baseball predictions here. Chris, you want to? Why don't we start? We'll go round by round what we thought would happen, and what we think will happen, starting with the wild card. Do you want to go first? Actually, I take that back. Before that, why don't we go back to Monday's games? First time in MLB history, we had two division tiebreakers in the NL West with the Dodgers and the Rockies, and the NL Central with the Cubs and the Brewers. So, what did you think of that? Who did you predict to win that one? Yeah. So you really thought you thought the Rockies were going to win that game, even though you and I both have feelings about that. All right. For me in that game, I didn't get a chance to see all of the games, but I did get a chance to watch parts of each one. The Brewers game was really exciting, and even the Dodgers game was too, although it was kind of a blowout. It was nice seeing the Arenado and Story back-to-back home runs in the ninth inning to come back. Unfortunately, it was a little too late for that. But had they gotten started earlier, I think the Rockies might have been able to pull it out. For me, I wanted I my predictions going into that game were that the Brewers and the Rockies would win their divisions, and part of that is because I predicted a Dodgers Rockies wild card game when we were at camp back in August, and I still felt strongly about that and wanted to see that happen because people hated me for saying the Dodgers weren't going to win the division. Um, but it happened, and the next day we had the wild card, and so my picks for that game were going to be that the Rockies would beat the Cubs, and that was an exciting game. I don't. After that game, I'm talking to my friends at school the next day, and we're just saying there is nothing like postseason baseball. October postseason baseball is the best kind of baseball. Anybody who disagrees, then I don't really know what kind of baseball fan they are. And I don't know if that's anybody on this show or not, and I don't mean that personally to anybody. But personally, postseason baseball is my favorite. We saw that in the Rockies Cubs game. People may think that those good games won't come around till later on, but let's remember we're talking baseball, and anything can happen. I predicted the Rockies, and I didn't really see them making a deep run, but more on that a little bit. But for my wild card, that takes me to my wild card picks, which were the Rockies over the Cubs, and then I thought the A's were going to beat the Yankees. Um, I didn't, I knew I didn't see them as being a postseason team. They're an up and coming team, and I didn't quite think they had it this year. But I know that, let's say, sometime in the next 3 years, they will be that team. Um, Personally, I think the A's starting Hendricks maybe wasn't a great idea. Yeah, I don't think that was a great idea. And they just couldn't hit. They couldn't put up against Severino's dominance. He was dominant that day, and that was one thing I think I underestimated. Was I actually had him on my fantasy team all year, so I'd been following him every start, and he was dominant, don't get me wrong, but there were some times that he just didn't pull it out. And I thought that Monday would be one of those days. So, um, yes, what did you think on the wild card games? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. Um, that's right. One more thing about the wild card. With the Cubs, I personally felt that they were overrated. Sorry, Cubs fans, but we got to remember this is not the same team we saw that broke the curse 2 years ago. Arrieta's gone. Chapman's gone. Um, John Lester, he's not as dominant. People think he's still dominant. He is not. He's not that same. He's granted nobody is going to be able to put up with guys like DeGrom and Scherzer. They are two of the best pitchers in the league. But if you look at Lester's stats from a few years ago, comparing them to now with those two, it's he's not a dominant pitcher like that. He just isn't that same dominant pitcher. And what else can you expect? This guy's been in the league for I don't know how long, but he's been around. He's been around for a long time. So that was for me. I just felt that the Cubs people were overrating them, and so a lot of people underestimated that. And when they were texting me that night, they were like, "Wow." It was a shocker. But hey, that's what we like to see in postseason baseball. And even just tournaments in general, we love seeing those types of upsets. Yep, exactly. October. And because the MLB moved up the season this year, I think it's great that they're able to complete all of the postseason in October. Whereas in the past, it's sometimes gone a couple days into November, which really by then, baseball is out. People are watching basketball by that point. At least by the end of October, people haven't quite dived into basketball or hockey or even just started watching those football games closer. So, so let's move on to the division series. We'll do the NL first for the division series, and then we'll talk about the AL. So, Rockies Brewers. What do you think about that? Well, what were your predictions prior to the series starting? Uh huh. Same here. For me, the Brewers. I actually have them going to the World Series in my bracket. Um, I I said back at camp in August that the Brewers were going to win the division. I did not think they at the time that they would be a World Series team. Granted, at that time, I didn't really know who from the NL was because let's be real here, the AL just has a better league this year as a whole. Let's look at the NL West. It wasn't really until the second half that the division placements really started falling into place. The Giants in the first half were even in contention. The Giants. And you and I both know what that feels like. We've been through it before. Um but so because of that, we're not talking that's division competition because they're good teams. That's division competition because all the teams weren't doing so great. So, and I didn't really know who to pick from the NL for a World Series team until about a week ago, if even that. I really feel that the Brewers can pull this off to go to World Series, and so I got them over the Rockies. Again, the Rockies are another up and coming team. Looking in the next 3 years, they have a chance. I didn't even think the Rockies. I didn't even in the beginning of September, I'm texting all the guys in the NSR group chat that we have, and we were talking about who we thought was going to win and go to the playoffs. The Rockies, a lot of us didn't think we're going to make it, and they were about. That was when the Diamondbacks were still in competition. I thought the Diamondbacks were going to win the division, and then they trailed off. And I'm not saying that, and I'm saying that unbiased. I'm saying that partly unbiased, mostly. But I didn't think the Rockies really had what it took, and there were a couple people in that group. There were a couple guys in that group chat who thought they would, and Owen and Van, you guys were right. I'll admit that. So, um, they're from Colorado, so you got to give them the credit. But hey, sometimes being biased and really being a fan of your home team comes to your advantage. So, anyways, I had the Rockies over the Brewers over the Rockies in that division series. What did you think for the other side of the NL with the Dodgers Braves? Okay. Okay. What did you think going in? Did you think prior to the series starting that the Dodgers were going to win it? That's right, they were in it for the third straight year. I forgot they were. I forgot they played the Cubs in 2016. I forgot about that. And then oh, okay, got it. Wow. So for me in that series, I had the Braves going into it. Um, that's I know that's a risky pick. Um, but I thought with how well Acuna was doing and all the other some yeah, I thought that the Braves would be able to pull it off. Um, I think part of that pick does come from a bias standpoint, unfortunately, um, as a Giants fan. But at the same time, I think I also underestimated how I knew the Dodgers were good. Um, but their bullpen is what's discouraged me. The fact that their bullpen is probably just as bad as the Giants. The only difference is the Dodgers actually have hitting that they can use to support that. The Giants, they don't even have that. Let's just face the truth. Um, so I think I underestimated that. Um, looking how things are going. Remember, this is postseason baseball, so anything could happen. But yeah, I think the Dodgers will probably pull it off at this point. The other thing I will say about the bullpen is that if somehow magically the Rockies and the Dodgers have to face each other in the LCS, oh boy, the Dodgers, good luck with your bullpen because you will not have Jansen for 3 games, 4 depending on who gets the home field advantage. Let's not keep that in mind. I mentioned that to a couple of my Dodger friends, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that was like it's something that people forget about." So I'm gonna just put that disclaimer out there. I remember watching and following a couple games back in August when Jansen was out, and that did not go over well. One of those even ended with a walk-off balk, a balk, BALK, which you rarely even see in the major leagues to begin with. Now to have that on a walk-off, that's just pathetic. We're talking this is the major leagues. We're not talking this is youth baseball where you could probably call a balk on every pitch. Granted, balks are so technical anyways, and probably one of my least favorite rule interpretations to look for, but so be it. Um, any other last thoughts, Chris, on the division series before we move on over to the AL? All right. So the AL, one thing I will say about just this whole league is that I knew, and I think a lot of just about almost all baseball fans knew at the start of the year, the AL is going to be an interesting run. Um, and I'm not saying that the NL can't win it, but just what I've been saying all year that I'm going to have to stick with now, and I think a lot of people would agree with me that this is not an NL year. I'm not saying that based on the All-Star game because really the All-Star game doesn't mean a darn thing. It's just for fun. It's probably one of the funnest in terms of the atmosphere, the funnest games you see all year, aside from the Little League Classic. Those two are really the best and most fun games to watch. Just from the sportsmanship and the atmosphere um, point of view in general. Um, so I'm gonna have to say that it will whoever comes out of the AL will win. That's just how I felt all year. Part of that I'm wondering does that let's have a discussion on this for a minute, Chris. The DH, do you think that has an effect onto the A have an effect on the AL's dominance or no? Okay. JD Martinez. Yeah. I would like to say yes, but I'm not 100% sure. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that trade. That's the thing is that in the trade deadline, like in the off-season trades, yeah, you remember who gets traded. At the trade deadline, there are some trades. Here's the thing with, I think this year with the trade deadline, there were so many blockbuster trades that other trades, like the Donaldson trade, get forgotten. And that's not in a bad way against the athletes or anything. That's just the fact that the news of the Machado and Dozier trades. There were even some other big ones that I can't remember off the top of my head, but even some other big trades that just kind of took over the news and spotlight. Whereas even though that happens in the off season, we got to remember the off season is 6 months. The trade deadline is about 2 weeks when all the trades actually go through. But yeah. So for me, I don't really care whether or not there's a DH. I like the idea of it, and I think, hey, great idea. Um, Teams shouldn't be obligated to use it, and they don't. I remember a couple years. I think this was either last year or the year before. The Giants. Hey, we have Matt Bum, who, as a pitcher, is hitting home runs. I think that was last year, right, Chris? And they were playing in an AL ballpark, and they opted not to use the DH because they had Mad Bum. Maybe that was because they were in a hitting ballpark. But point being, I don't care whether or not there is one. And I know this isn't necessarily a hot topic in baseball, but I'm telling you, it probably will come up in the near future, in the next few years, 5 years or so. And I don't have a preference either way. But if we're going to talk about equality between the AL and the NL, then it should be either yay or nay for both leagues, an all or nothing. Either you have it in both divisions or you don't. You don't do this one league yes, one league no. And I will say that actually I think in the past sometimes messes people up when they get to the World Series. So, do you want to give your AL picks? Why don't you give your AL picks, Chris? The division series. Okay. And is that what you thought going into it? Okay. Okay, fair enough. I've been saying the Reds for me in that series. I've been saying the Red Sox for the last 2 months. Ever since I saw that they were on track to break the record. And people are gonna say the records don't matter, which as a Warriors fan I will have to side with to some extent. But again, you never know what can happen. And hey, if you win 117 games, which we know they didn't, but they were on track to at one point in time, if you're winning 113 games of 162 or whatever, in that range, even more than like 105, you're a pretty darn good baseball team. It's just a fact. Whereas then you have the opposite end of the spectrum with the Orioles losing about that many, who just let's not even. That's they have. They are gonna. It's gonna be another good 10, 15 years before you see a good team out of them. Which people probably said the same thing about the Astros a few years ago. But yeah, that's why when they made it to the World Series and they had those deep runs that first time, I wanted them to win. 'Cause I'm like, wow, last. These guys have been last for so long, and all of a sudden they just have had this breakthrough in 1 year. Yeah, and they made. Yeah. So for this year's series, I had it as Boston A's, as I said earlier. But once I saw the Yankees once I saw that the Yankees won the wild card, I'm still gonna stick with the Boston pick. But just because for some reason I don't sense that same Yankees dominance that we saw last year. Last year we would get these notifications where it's like Judge home run, Sanchez home run. Like we just get that. This year, yes. This year with Stanton, I thought, God darn, these guys are just gonna be dominant. You know, you add the 2017 lineup, Stanton. Holy crap! Yeah, but for some reason, I just didn't. But I just don't think they have enough to put it to the talent of the Red Sox. But once I saw the Yankees won, that's when I'm like, oh god, we're gonna get a pretty damn good series here. This is not only do we just have the Yankees Red Sox rivalry that is probably second among the biggest rivalries in sports, the first being the Dodgers Giants. We're talking it's the same level of intensity. Those are probably two of the nastiest rivalries in sports. Next on that list and is probably Cards Cubs, but we're not even going to talk about that. I knew it was going to be a good series. I think the Red Sox are going to go in five. It's going to be real fun seeing what happens. Oh yeah. And let's see here. Speaking of which, I'm going to go onto the At Bat app here and take a look at the scores going on right now. Actually, let's do the second division series pick, and then we'll take a look at what's going on today. So Houston, Cleveland, um, Cleveland, yeah, they have a good starting rotation and all, and they have some strong hitting to back that up. I'm, yeah, me too. Yeah, and that's, um, hey, Houston, they are a good team. They are, I just love watching Houston. Um, and seeing how well they put up a fight with the A's. Better yet, how much the A's caught up to them. I remember I went to a game in the first half of the season, and just the first half, nobody talked about the A's because the A's are the A's. Then all of a sudden, it's like we're in August, sitting there at camp making our first round of predictions, and I'm like, wow, are the A's really that good? And sure enough, they were. And that we saw how close that division came out to be. Yeah. Even the fact that the Mariners last, even the fact that the Mariners, yeah, they were a week, they were a week out of they were about a week behind in the competition, between 5 and 7 games. But even they had a chance to come back. But I knew they didn't quite have the talent this year. Yeah, the Mariners. People were saying the Mariners were going to make it, and I'm like, not quite. Not quite. I do think, though, with the talent of the A's and the Astros, let me say something about the A's, even though they're no longer in it. Somehow they managed to make the playoffs with the lowest pay in payroll. That is, it was only like 60 million. I'm like, wow. With the lowest opening day payroll. That's like, wow. How you get a team to do that? I don't know. So, I'm gonna have to go with Houston in the series. How about you? That's what I thought going into it. That's what I'm going with now. Me neither. Me neither. I knew it would be close, but I'm like, nah, not gonna be an Indians year. And overall, I just with the whole basketball thing that I have strong feelings about from 3 seasons ago now. This is the third season. I do not like Cleveland. I'm as a sports industry, I'm not a huge fan of it. So I don't know really why my basketball feelings come into baseball, but they just do. So let's take a look before we move on. Um, I'm looking at the At Bat app right now and forgot we don't have any AL games today, but we do have the NL games. We have at 1:35. It's 11:10 Pacific time right now. So at 1:35 Pacific time, have the Brewers Rockies game in Colorado. You got Marquez going up against Wade Miley. What's your pick there? Okay. I will agree with you on that one. It will be close. Again, another fun matchup to see. Granted, almost none of them, are boring matchups, but this is going to be fun to see. I've been Marquez is another player that I had on my fantasy team this year who was a dominant pitcher. He did have his starts where he just go out there and couldn't do anything, but Marquez, he's a good pitcher. Wade Miley, I don't know. I don't really quite feel as strongly about, but I think the Brewers offense can balance that out. I do. Close game. I'm gonna have to say Rockies here, and then I don't know what tomorrow's matchup is for that. It'll be Freeland against somebody else. Freeland has a 2.85 ERA, record of 17-7, and they're playing at Coors at in Colorado. So I part of why I'm going to say that series can actually have a potential to go to 5 is because they're in Colorado and they have their pitchers. Even though Colorado's a hitting ballpark, somehow their pitching can still go strong at home. So it's going to be interesting to see. Depending on when we do our next episode, we can definitely debrief that. Depending, and then later today at 5 o'clock, we'll have the Dodgers Braves. Um, Not really sure who to pick, but with Bueller starting and seeing his performance uh in the tiebreaker game on Monday, I'm gonna have to go with the sweep on this one. Um, I just don't really quite think the Brewers can. I don't know. Again, anything could happen, but I just don't quite see the Braves making a comeback. But we'll see. Anyways, let's move on to the LCS. Let's see the AL first on this one. Um, I'll go first in the AL. You can give your first prediction on the NL. For the AL, I got Boston